When I was younger, my mom used to make me a fleece tie blanket every year. Once I got old enough, I would always help her make them. I love making them because they are simple and they keep me warm during the winter. In the last 2 years, I've made 2 fleece blankets that have meaning to me. This one's red and black and white, and red on the other side. It's Park Hill colors. And this one has music-related stuff on it, and pink on the other side. They're about 2 yards long, and they make a decent sized blanket. I will be making another one soon with Fort Hays State colors. Fleece tie blankets are simple and fun to make. They take a little time, but they're definitely worth it. Today I'll be showing you how to make a fleece tie blanket by walking you through 7 simple steps. Before you start these steps, the things you need are 1.5 to 2 yards of fleece. I suggest anti-pill. It won't create little balls of fuzz falling off of your blanket. You need a tape measure or a ruler, a Sharpie to measure out your corners of your blanket, and some scissors. Make sure the scissors are sharp enough to cut through the fabric, otherwise there'll be jagged edges. Alright, so I made this little chart, and on this, the first thing we do is lay out our first piece of fabric, which is this black. So I already have 2 edges tied, but you'll lay this out on the table, make sure it's flat, and then once you get that done, the next thing you do is lay out the second piece, which is your top piece, on top of the black. Here's a little bit of them. This one right here, step number 2. So you're going to lay your yellow on top of the black. I chose yellow and black because those are my school colors next year. So I'm laying these on top. I already tied some of these, but it works out anyways. Alright, and then once we get to step 2, when we get to step 3, you're going to trim the edges just to make sure that they match up a little bit. There's some trimming I can do. They need to be close enough to look relatively similar. It's not that big of a deal if they're not 100% perfect. Alright, so I trimmed my edges a little bit. Just take the extra pieces and put them off to the side. So I have my edges trimmed. And then the next thing we do is you go to step 4, and you're going to cut a 4" by 4" square out of the corner of your blanket. I marked it off with a Sharpie. I just took this tape measure and measured 4 inches down, and then I measured 4 inches in and 4 inches out to the other edge. And so I'm going to cut that out now with my scissors. Cut along that black Sharpie or whatever Sharpie you use. Try to cut on the outside part of it so it doesn't show up on the top part of your blanket. If you can't, that's not a big deal. Alright, so I've cut my corner. When I cut my corner, I have 2 separate pieces of fabric. Don't need those, just toss them to the side. Alright, so I've ut my corners, that's step 4. When I get to step 5, I'm going to cut the fringe around my edges of my blanket. In a 2-yard blanket, you're going to cut them about 1.5 to 2 inches apart. This one's only 1/2 yard because it's just an example. I'm only going to cut them 1 inch apart, so I'm going to do that right now. They need to be about 4 inches long. The shorter they are, the harder they are to tie. I always do mine 4 inches to match up with the square. If you do, you can do less, but it's kind of a challenge if you do. Alright, I'm cutting my blanket. Make sure you're cutting through both layers. If you don't, it's a little hard to get that figured out. But I'm almost there. I've got about 2 more cuts to make. There's that one. The last 2 are not going to be 1 inch apart for sure, but just try to get them close. Alright, so I've cut my fringe. That's step number 5. I'm moving on to step number 6, which is to tie the fringe. When you tie the fringe, it's like tying a regular knot. When you pull on them, the top part of the fringe is going to be the black, and that looks really cool because you're mixing them up. So I'm tying this around once and tying it again, pulling up. So wrap around your thing, push through the middle. You've got one, and then you wrap it around again and pull, and the black part is on the top. And you do that for the rest of the edge till you get to the corner. The tying is the part that takes the longest. but if you take your time, it's not that bad. I'm not taking my time, but that's okay. I have 5 more left. Almost there. When you tie it, it looks a little bunched up throughout the blanket. That's not a big deal. You can stretch it out when you're done. That's part of our next step. Almost there. 2 more. This is the most time taking piece of it, but you could take it step by step, do a little at a time with the blanket. Don't have to do it all at once. Just make sure if you fold it up and bring it out later, that you match up your fabrics again before you start tying. Alright, so I've tied my edge here, and you can see that the fringe right here is on the front part, and that looks really cool because these are 2 pieces of plain fabric. I'm not going to tie this part because that takes too long. Alright, so our next step, once we are done with step 6, we go to step 7. And so step 7 is finishing the blanket. When you finish out the blanket, you just go through and you stretch it out to make sure that there aren't as many clumps in the blanket. It's okay if there's a few. Make sure you tied all of your ties. Make sure they're tight enough. They work out nice. Once you wash the blanket for the first time, it will secure the ties a little more, but when you're done washing it, make sure that you do check to make sure that they all stayed tied. In the end, this is a smaller blanket, so this is what it'll look like. It does end up a little smaller than you would like it to be, but it's not that big of a difference. These blankets are easy to make, they're fun to make, they're simple to take care of, simple to make. Thank you for watching, and I hope you try this out sometime.